Inflation, a recruiting crisis, aging equipment, and years of budget cuts. All factors weighing into a nonpartisan 2023 U.S. Index of Military Strength. Heritage's conclusion: the United States military is not prepared to meet the current threat environment of an increasingly dangerous world.
We assess the overall status of the military as weak, and that's meant to convey a level of gravity.
Breaking down the findings by branch, the Army comes in at marginal, seen as aging faster than it's modernizing and much smaller than needed. The Navy rated as weak, with a rapidly decreasing fleet. A similar rating for the Space Force, which lacks the capacity to manage the explosive growth in space we're seeing from other countries, while the Air Force rates lowest at very weak due to retention issues and aging equipment. The only bright spot among the branches being the Marine Corps, with a strong rating, having adapted well to the needs of today. U.S. nuclear capability is also rated and determined to be strong thanks to a bipartisan commitment to modernization in that area. Index editor Dakota Wood says as of today, the U.S. military as a whole would struggle to meet the demands of a single major conflict, let alone engage on multiple fronts.
So if we got involved in some kind of a NATO-Russia thing in Europe, and you really had to focus on that because of interests and obligations, then you don't have an ability to do anything in the Indo-Pacific. And so if you were China and you look at a tied-up America, wouldn't that be an opportune time to then try to retake Taiwan, right?
Wood says while funding is the ultimate problem, it's also the solution. In order to get the military back to fighting strength, spending would need to increase, meaning the defense budget would need to come in significantly over the rate of inflation.
So it's going to require both parties, and it's going to require both branches, the legislative branch and the executive branch, to agree to dramatically increase defense spending.
The defense authorization bill for 2023 gives the military a record $858 billion, $45 billion more than President Biden requested. While that keeps pace with inflation, Wood says it falls short of what's really needed.
It's going to take many years of serious investment to get things back to where they should be.
America's adversaries, meanwhile, are steadily increasing investments into their military might.
You're seeing the Chinese military on track to triple, not double, triple the amount of nuclear warheads it has on station. They are outbuilding us in ships at a rate of 5 to 1. Their Navy is on track to be almost double the size of the U.S. Navy. By the end of the decade, their Space Force is launching more. We've seen what Russia's doing, Iran marching towards a nuclear weapon. We can go around the world.
Representative Mike Waltz, a House Armed Services Committee member, says it's time for the U.S. to stop playing catch-up.
You're going to see this Congress work to get, and this Republican-led Congress, to get the Pentagon back on its core mission of warfighting, of deterring wars by appearing strong to our adversaries. That's how you keep the peace.
Wood warns that's usually easier said than done, as it would require Congress to prioritize projects that won't show immediate benefits.
You know, if I get my student loans canceled or something like that, right, that helps me today. If I build a new submarine, well, that won't go into the water for 5 or 6 years.
He hopes the ongoing war in Ukraine will remind lawmakers of how expensive war would be with another major power, far different from what the U.S. military faced over the last 2 decades in the Middle East.
You know, non-state terrorist actors with no Navy, no Air Force, no Army in any conventional sense. And so we have gotten used to this idea that a smaller, older, not well-equipped military in this sense is able to do everything that we would want it to do, but that's a false sense of security.
When it comes to recommendations, Wood would be encouraged by a significant and consistent investment in munitions, especially since the U.S. has provided Ukraine with more than a quarter of our supply. Then, in the coming years, he suggests an increase in defense spending and a renewed focus on expanding the military's capacity. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.